Yeah, but that's the way it was back then. So all I had at the time was my first book, The Tower of Babbling. I'd written it as a language learning resource in 2019. It came out. And so I decided, hey, I'm just going to read this book. I'm just going to record it, and I'm going to turn it into a podcast. I had no idea how to set up a podcast. I had a laptop. I at least had a microphone. A lot of people don't have a microphone when they start, but I just started, and that was my first podcast. It was the Tower of Babbling podcast. It's essentially like an audiobook version with some commentary from me as I read. So that was the beginning of it, and then from there, I was working on my first fiction novel, science fiction novel, and as I was finishing up that novel, I wanted to start marketing it. So I was like, how do you come out as a new author and get known? Well, I was like, well, I've already started this podcast. I had a little experience. I'd been podcasting for a few months. So I was like, okay, let me start another podcast. And that started what was then the Sirius and Limnic. That's the name of my novel, Sirius and Limnic. That was the Sirius and Limnic podcast at the time. And now it has since become Sirius and Limnic Behind the Book. Because I did something interesting, which I remember being on an interview when the book first came out, and somebody was like, this is pretty cool. It was basically a supplement to the book. It was a behind the scenes, it was behind the book. You know how they used to have behind the music, and used to talk about different albums and how the band made the song and this type of thing. I was like, man, they don't have that for books. At least I don't know if they do. So I was like, I'm going to create that. So I did like a 20 episode thing to where I talked about different themes in the book. I talked about characters. I talked about my motivation for writing the book and the type of stuff that if you like the book, then you're going to be interested in it. But the problem was at the time, nobody knew about the book. So in hindsight, that was maybe a little too early for that type of thing. But I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad it exists because I just got to experiment with another podcast.
Everyone, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have everyone back with us today, and my guest is on the other side of the world from me, and I am so excited to have my guest on today. Keith is here with me, and I'll let Keith tell you where he is because it's fascinating, the story behind where he is as well and why he's there. I'm so excited to have him. Keith, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. Really enjoyed our just conversations and how we connected a little while ago. And it was Podfest, right? I think that's what it was. It was like an online thing that we met. And yeah, we just got in a random room together and we just kind of hit it off. And now here we are on podcast number 1. I love it.
It was like speed. So it was like speed dating, right? We're like, okay, I got like,
it was
talk to this person. Hi. Yeah. Anyways.
And just a note about that, I thought it was funny how it would just start fading out.
Yeah. You're like, am I
as your time was running?
Am I falling asleep?
It's like you're in a club and they're turning the lights on at the end of the night. Yeah. Like, okay, get the hell out of here. It's time to go. But yeah, I'm Keith Hayden. I'm over here in Okinawa, Japan. It's a ways away from where you're at over in snowy Canada. Yeah. And no snow down here, thankfully. For us, but so I'm in Okinawa, Japan, and I've actually been here before. This is actually my second time here. I was here when I served in the U.S. Air Force, active duty, about a little over 10 years ago. I got here for the first time, wow. And now I'm back. My wife still works with the military, so I'm back here again, which I have no problem with. I love it over here. I love Japanese culture. Japanese food's amazing. I speak Japanese fairly well. Yeah, it's just a good life over here.
Okay, so I have to ask, Keith, I have listeners in Japan. So would you like to welcome and greet them to the podcast?
Really?
Because it'd be amazing for them. They'd be like, is there an English podcast? And all of a sudden, Keith starts talking.
All of a sudden, konnichiwa, ohayo gozaimasu. Hajimemashite, Keith desu. To, Dave Kamburu-san desu. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Yokoso podcasto e. Basically, for those everybody who speaks only English, I basically said, "Hey, I'm Keith. That's Dave. Welcome to the podcast. Good morning, good afternoon. Just a bunch of greetings."
Nice. See,
I know it sounds amazing.
It sounds awesome. I love it. Well, okay, I have to ask Keith: is it is it a difficult language to learn?
Absolutely. It is. I, I just tweeted about this yesterday. I've been learning Japanese for close to 20 years now, and that's probably the best I can do. I'm just kidding. I can do better than that, but it is extremely difficult, especially if your native language is English, because the grammar's backwards. You have these honorifics, basically, if you're talking to somebody that's high. Like if I'm talking to you, someone who's like a mutual or something, then I would have to talk differently and use different words than if I'm talking to like my boss or a shopkeeper or something. So you have that. It's super hard to hear. It's amazingly difficult to read. There's 3 writing systems, and they mix and match them all the time over here. The writing has no spaces. So unlike in English where words are spaced out, in Japanese, nothing's spaced out in actually written Japanese. So it's up to you to know enough vocabulary to work out what word is what. And, you know, they have sentences and stuff, of course, but it's just hard to see within the sentence. So it's amazingly difficult. I have extreme empathy for anyone who's seriously trying to learn the language, because I've learned it up, down, sideways. I've tried every different method. I have a minor in Japanese, actually.
Wow.
And that doesn't mean I could speak it. I couldn't speak it well until after I was out of college. So
amazing.
Yeah, it's a hard language.
And so I guess for people
for
people who are not native to Japan, how accepted are you?
Yeah.
Are you in, like, how welcomed are you in that culture?
It's interesting down here in Okinawa. Okinawa is different because if you've never been to Japan, most people, when they think of Japan, they think of probably Tokyo, they think of Kyoto, like mainland Japan. And that is Japan to a lot of people. Okinawa is much different because it has a lot of Chinese influence. Their culture, you know, I think we talked about this last time. Their history is kind of mostly Chinese for a long time. There was a kingdom down here called the Ryukyu Kingdom, and they were Chinese vassals. They traded with them. They did business, all that type of stuff. And then after a while, the Japanese came in, made it Japanese, and then we came in, the Americans, and then there's a lot of American influence down here. So because of that, you have the local Okinawan type of dialect. You have the Japanese, of course, and then you have a huge American influence. Lots of English speakers, lots of businesses that cater to us as English speakers. Okay. They even accept dollars, and a lot U.S. dollars.
Really?
And a lot of, so, yeah, you can just roll up in some places. Yeah. And yeah, so I think Japan as a whole is a very mostly homogenous culture. I think their demographic is like 85% plus, not Japanese, like native Japanese ethnicity here. So yeah, when I've traveled around Japan, I've been to the other parts of Japan. It's you definitely stand out, especially as a taller black guy, American over here. Yeah, you're going to stand out. And as far as being accepted, I think they're okay. They're polite, at least. They're at least polite, but I've had mostly good interactions with Japanese people in general. So
especially when you can speak to them and, you know, address them, and that's another level,
able to speak
right?
the language
You're like,
is definitely
okay.
That's next level. Yeah. Most can't, because like I said, it's very difficult. Yeah. So,
well, thank you for your service, first of all. I'm amazed, and I love honoring that, because that just shows that's a different type of person to devote themselves to what you've done and the places you've been and the things you've been involved in. I just really want to honor that. So thank you for serving. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
So we connected, like you said, on that speed dating podcast meetup thing. I had zero expectations. I had no idea what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden we're dumped into these rooms, and there's like, I don't know, 40 seconds or something crazy. And like, you're meeting people, they're popping on your screen. You're like, now you're connecting with Keith Hayden. I'm like, okay, what? Who's that? Where? Right? So, yeah. And then when you mentioned where you were, I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. Yeah. So I'm so happy that you have time to talk. And you're kind of a big deal. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to put it out there. We talked before we record. You're on Pat Flynn podcast. Like, come on. That's a feather in the cap right there. That's an amazing person to interact with. Yeah. So tell me about your podcast background. What do you love about podcasting?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah. So podcasting, I was like a lot of people, I was a pandemic podcaster. The pandemic hit back in 2020, and like a lot of people, I was just like, okay, I had lost my job, like a lot of people. I was doing tutoring at the time. I remember the guy texted me and was like, yeah, don't come in anymore. And I was like, when can I come back in? He's like, oh, I'll send you your last check and then I'll let you know. He never let me know. I never heard
That
from him
was it.
again. That was it. So, yeah. So, those were kind of dark times. I think a lot of people forget that. So I was like, man, what can I do to like do something, instead of just sit here and doom scrolling and all this stuff. So I started a podcast, my very first podcast, and it was just me reading my book, The Tower of Babbling, my first book, which is a language learning resource that I wrote. And I just basically read it. And it was an audiobook plus. It was me reading, and then I'd occasionally stop and be like, well, this is what I meant, and add some clarification. But that was the podcast. Like a lot of first podcasts, it was lacking in quality, but not in context and not in effort, not in the least. So that led me to my second podcast. I did that for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And then I moved on to my second podcast, which I was writing my novel, Sirius and Limnic. And I wanted to, hey, how can I advertise this novel? I'll start a podcast. And so the original concept was a behind the book type of thing. You know how they used to have it behind the music?
Yeah.
That old show on MTV or VH1. Well, I was like, man, I want to do something like that for books because I don't see a lot of people doing that. So I recorded 20 episodes of me talking about the background of the book, why I wrote it, talking about characters, inspiration. And I was like, if it's something that if you like the book, then you'll dig this podcast. But the problem was nobody had read the book yet. It wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
It was meant to be promotional. So it kind of came, I put the cart before the horse, so to speak. But I'm glad I did it because it gave me another, kind of podcasting credit, like I've done another podcast. And so that led to my third podcast, which was supposed to be the full audiobook version of the novel. And that's what it started as. It started as just me reading. I call it dramatic reading of the book. I'm not just reading because now it's fiction, right? Yeah. So I was like, man, I can I used to do this thing with my brothers when I was a kid. We loved Japanese role-playing games, video games. And so, back in the day, they didn't have voice actors or anything like that. It was just all text.
Yeah.
So we would read the text out loud in like funny voices and just we'd make voices for the different characters. It was a lot of fun. It's some of my fond childhood memories. So I kind of took that same spirit to reading my book, to making these voices, and it's fun. And I listened to it back. I'm like, man, this sounds pretty convincing. It sounds interesting. So yeah, so it started out as the audiobook, but then it evolved into an audio drama, which includes sound design. That's when I started doing music for the podcast. It just kind of evolved and blown up from there. So that was my third podcast. And my fourth podcast is with my brother. My brother is very anti-social media. Like he's like the opposite of me when it comes to those types of things. He's like a hermit. You can't find this guy. I try and email him sometimes. He don't answer. I'm like, man, I got to send you a letter or something to get on your schedule. But so we would have these catch-up calls once every couple of weeks or once every couple of months. And one time we were like, man, these are kind of good. Like we're dropping some nuggets here. We should record this. And so that's how my fourth podcast, Two Brothers Talking, was born. It's just me and my brother talking about creativity. Not just creativity, but really just whatever we want. Because he's more into like the technical space and he's a software dev. So yeah, so he's got we kind of have this kind of opposing mind type of thing. I'm more into like pop culture and contemporary stuff that's going on and things like that. So yeah, and he's like kind of the opposite of that. So that's how we kind of play the podcast. But yeah, those are my 4 shows, man.
Nice.
Lots of experience podcasting at this point.
It's great. And what I like about the one you just mentioned with your brother is the creativity side and
Mm,
tapping into creativity. Now, we talked before
yeah.
we hit record, you're creating a city
Hmm.
for creative people to get
Yeah.
together and share. I'd like to kind of talk about that a little bit. Can you bring
Sure.
us into that?
Yeah. So this thing that I, on a whim, called the city, which it doesn't really matter what it's called, is essentially it's a space for people to share in creativity. So what I'm trying to do with my newsletter, I have a newsletter called the Creative Futurist Newsletter, and it, in addition to being kind of my philosophy of why I create and how I combine music and language learning with coding and other stuff and writing stuff that doesn't seem to fit together, I put it together. It's also to educate about how other people can find their creativity as well.
Hmm.
So I aim to give people tools based on my experience to help them, whatever they do, write, draw, paint, whatever you do. I want to help you to do it more and better. And if you want to go to the monetization side, starting a business, we can talk about that. I have a feeling most people don't. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but I feel like a lot of people just want something that's theirs, that they can look at and say, hey, I'm very proud of this, that I made this, and maybe a few people around them will appreciate as well. And so that's what I'm trying to do with it. We just had our first, I call it office hours, kind of meet up online last week, and it went well. Had two people show up that I just met through a conference that I went to. So yeah, I'm definitely looking for more people to, and then of course it works as a networking thing, right?
Yeah.
As you join up, you meet other people that are doing similar things to you, because it feels like we're doing this stuff in a vacuum, especially as podcasters, right?
Yeah.
You sit there, you know how it is.
Yeah.
You sit there behind the mic and you're like, man, is anybody listening to this?
Yeah.
Anybody gonna hear this? I don't know. I'm just kind of talking to myself for hours on end. Yeah, it's just kind of a lonely road for a lot of creators, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way in a lot of different fields. It doesn't matter if it's podcasting or something else. So yeah, just a way to network, and then I'd look for opportunities to connect different people. When I see opportunities, hey, that we would need people for a podcast. Hey, do y'all want to be on a podcast? We need people for this. Here's this opportunity. So it's just kind of that we help each other rise at the same time, and yeah, it's meant to be a space to help people just do more of the stuff that they
Yeah.
want to do.
And I love it because we're actually a good demonstration of that. The two of us,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
We met at a conference that we signed up for, and we were thrown into a room at random order, what I can
Yep.
assume, and now we're having a conversation together. So
Exactly.
what you're
There it is.
building is what we've already experienced in another form. I love the idea.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's this concept that I was talking to somebody very recently about this. It's this concept of kind of building these communities, and you see the rise of these internet communities, right? Discords and
Yeah.
Slacks. I mean, I don't know if you do Discord, but
Yeah.
I'm in a ton of different servers, and every time I go into a different server, it's like walking into a different, oh, man, I was gonna say country, but it feels like that, right? Every place has kind of these different norms, what's expected, what's accepted, how people will behave. Um, it's just kind of that way, and you can curate your experience. And I think these atomized communities, these collectives that a lot of people are setting up, I think that's a big part of the future of how we're going to be online. Because you see kind of the traditional social media is changing so much
Yeah.
as far as the type of content. It's mostly creator content. It's less people's personal photos and stories now, and it's more people, hey, I got this business, I got this opportunity, listen to my podcast, watch my YouTube. It's that type of thing. And so where can you go to kind of, hey, I don't want to hear that right now. I want to be a part of this kind of insulated space that feels safe for
Yeah.
me to be with the family or be with the homies or be with the homegirls.
Yeah.
I'm just building my own version of that. And I feel like more and more people are going to be building their own versions of that. That's another conversation, but
Yeah.
anyway, that's,
I love it. I
that's
love
kind of
that
some
you're building
commentary
that
on that.
space.
Yeah.
I told you, I put my hand up. I'm interested. I
Hey,
would love to connect and
love to
continue
have
this
you.
conversation over there as well. Then
Absolutely.
You never know where it's going to lead, right? And again, going back to
Exactly.
that conference, I had no idea what to expect,
No expectations. Just show
right?
up and hey, we do what we do.
And now, so I'm happy that I went because I got to meet you. That's great. Um,
For sure.
okay, so for that specifically, for we're calling it the city. I'm doing air quotes in the air here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for that, we can connect with you through your website, which we'll talk about near the end of the podcast as
Sure.
well, and in the show notes as links.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll be the best way to people to find your group and
Yeah,
find the next one. And your newsletter is also really
exactly.
important part of that. Okay,
Yes.
good. All right, so people are already like going, Dave, okay, you got me. Now what do I do? Stick with
Mm-hmm.
us. We got more to talk about, and we'll give you all that information in the show notes as well.
For
Um,
sure.
so Keith, let's talk about your newest book. I see it right
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through this and give us a
Yeah.
sense of what this is and who it's for? I'm really interested.
Yeah. So this is Sirius and Limnic. It is those of you that are listening, because I know my wife's always like, nobody knows how to spell that. Every time I say it, she'd be like, nobody knows how to spell that. You need to write it down. And I'm like, Cereuslimnic. And it's an ampersand in between the words.
Yes.
Sirius and Limnic. This is a fiction book about two organizations that are in conflict over the future of humankind. And so I wanted to tell a story about basically perspectives. I wanted to have these different characters seeing this institution changing, and then I wanted to talk about how they're each affected by this change. And there's a big message in the book about the danger of institutions. And I'm not just talking like corporations or governments or stuff like that. I'm talking about the human soul, human beings as institutions. Because, when you think about it, everybody thinks of themselves as an institution, especially now. We live in the age of social media where it's all about you. You can see yourself reflected, anywhere you want every day. And that is a relatively new phenomenon. Like you're probably old enough to remember where, there's no social media.
Yeah,
The only
nothing.
place to see yourself is in the mirror.
A mirror. That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
you got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's not like today where you can I literally see kids. I work in a high school as a substitute teacher. I literally see kids turn on their camera phone, and that's how they do their makeup. It's crazy, right? Like,
Yeah.
you use the camera phone as a mirror, and it is a 24/7 mirror. And I think a lot
Ooh.
of us don't think of it that way. We just accept the technology, and it's convenient. I can talk to my friends. I can, order food. I can do all these things. But I think it's reinforced this notion that we're the only ones in the world that matter, that we're always going to be here, that we're always, especially, with the nature of digital stuff, there is some truth to the fact that once you put it on the internet, it's kind of going to stay there somewhere. Somebody's going to have it. You can delete it off your machine or whatever, especially now. Cloud servers, everything instant saves, boom,
Yeah.
So the novel is a huge commentary on that. That's like the big picture. But going down into the layers, as you can probably tell, listeners can tell, I have a lot of different interests, and I wanted to put that into the novel. So I mentioned Japanese role-playing games. There's influences with that, with the structure. I love Chinese dramas. I've been watching Chinese dramas for the last 4 or 5 years with my wife. And so there's influence with that. There's, of course, science fiction in there. Actually, science fiction is probably my weakest influence, if I'm honest. Like, I didn't grow up a big science fiction person, reading stuff. I read more of like the classics when I was in school, like American classics.
Yeah.
But science fiction wasn't high on the list. So I think it was because I wanted to set it in the future, and I wanted to be able to make up some fantastical drama, like new toys, new what ifs type of stuff. So I put it, okay, I'll set it in the future. I'll do some science fiction stuff. But science fiction's there. And then, of course, my military background. The military is a huge part of my life. My parents were in the military. I did military stuff when I was in high school. I was in active duty. I went to a military college. I'm still very closely connected with the military out here in Okinawa, huge military presence, U.S. military. So there's no way that could not bleed into the book. And I put those elements in there of the culture. And if you read it, those that know military culture, really any military culture, because there's some things that are universal about military culture.
Yeah.
They will recognize certain things as far as the way certain things go. But it's a fun book, and I'm a teacher at heart. I'm actually a certified math teacher as well, and I wanted to put lessons in there. I didn't want to just write a rag of a novel and just say, oh, okay, this is fun. This is a fun story. It is a fun story, but within each character and within certain scenarios of the book, there are little lessons, just kind of reflections, basically, about, is this who we want to be as a species? It's kind of an extrapolation of where we're at now to where things could be. Some things are better, some things aren't. Some people try and make things better. That makes things worse in different ways. It's better for some people. It's not better for other people. So it's a commentary on society and where I hope we're going towards, but at the same time, it's also a caution of, hey, we could be going towards this when it comes to technology, especially now with I see the AI stuff. I've been tracking it for years, and algorithms, and now you can, at a click of a button, you can change somebody's face to another person's face. You can change somebody's voice. Things, I read this on Twitter all the time. Things are about to get weird in the future. And that's going to be a part of it. Like people, what's real and what's not. Some people would say, me and you talking right now is not real because we're not talking in person. We're talking across wavelengths through the internet and wires and cables running under the sea, especially, we're so geographically separated. So what is real? That's going to be called into question quite a bit in the future. So I wanted to, I'm not saying my novel hits all those things, but I wanted to scratch the surface of those issues.
Yeah. And like I see it in the podcasting space, I have authors come on and creators come on. They're all talking about Chat GPT and all of this stuff that does everything for you. And I can go sit and watch Netflix now because I don't need to have my own thoughts anymore. And I'm like, wait a minute. So
slippery slope there. It's slippery slope. Yeah. So there, and I've played a lot with Chat GPT and many other AI tools in the last few months. And at this point, in March of 2023, when we're recording this, it's definitely not I can sit back and watch Netflix while it does my job for me phase. It's not quite there yet. I have a feeling it can get there, but even so, if it does and when it does, that doesn't mean the end of human creativity. It doesn't mean the end. You see all these, I'm sure you've seen it, the fear mongers on YouTube and on social media. Is this the end? Have they gotten us? The singularity is near. All this, they are come.
Yes.
You heard all this.
Blue pill, red pill.
Yeah. You choose robots or humans. Which ones? It's, you got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, a lot of it's hype and sensationalism. You see this with a lot. I'm a student of history. And so you see this a lot throughout the ages. I read an article, a very good article, kind of comparing the AI revolution that we're going through right now to the typewriter. And he finds kind of a parallel, a metaphor for when the typewriter was introduced back in the 19th century. Everybody was like, that's not real. You're not writing by hand. Where's your quill? Where's your pen? Where's your paper? What's going on? I mean, did that not the same thing happen with computers?
Yeah.
In the 20th century, oh, that's not real. That's a machine doing your stuff. Humans aren't thinking that. So you see this every time. And, I'm not saying that I feel like this is a little bit different because of the scale of it. And because of the speed. Like, I don't know about you, but I can feel the speed of this.
Yeah.
Unlike, and that's the thing that's different. Like, it's not moving at a year's pace, or it is like almost weekly there is some new thing that is like, I saw somebody create an anime using AI last week, and every I'm like I said, I'm plugged into this on Twitter, so my feed is full of people trying out these tools and say, hey, try this, try that, use this prompt, and I see this stuff, and I'm just like, whoa, there's no it's nearly impossible to keep. The only people that can keep up are the people that are making it and the people that are already in the lane of it. Like I'm kind of close to it, but I'm too busy with my podcast, and I got, I still teach, so I can't go in as much as I'd like to, but just kind of watching it from the sidelines, it just feels like you're just watching a car hit the hit
Yeah.
the rocket boost.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that is a little bit scary
Yeah.
because people are, as a collective, we are typically poor at moving that fast. We just don't move that fast. It takes
Yeah.
people time. And I have to acknowledge, I'm at like kind of the tip of the spear of this, like being on Twitter in these spaces. You kind of have to be in the room with these things to even know what's going on, let alone have the time to experiment with it and kind of digest it. Okay, what can it do?
Yeah.
How can I use it? What are the features and parameters? What are the rules for this? Most people don't have that kind of time. They can't.
Yeah.
So
I remember going and Googling myself.
yeah.
And then all the people who had encyclopedias are like, Google, that's terrible. We sell
Mm-hmm. Yep.
encyclopedias. You need paper books in your house. And I'm like, okay. Google's
Yep.
changing and updating all the time. Then there's like Wikipedia and all that stuff. But I
Wikipedia.
actually, I actually went and chat GPT'd myself. I don't know if that's a verb now, but I did that and it came back with stuff about me. And
Wow.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck? But it said that I lived in a different part of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
It acknowledged my wife, who I'm married
Mm-hmm.
to, and it
Yeah.
said that I was into growing certain kind of plants in my garden. And I'm like, I don't even have a garden. So I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
so
funny.
I said to ChatGPT, these things are incorrect. And it
Mm-hmm.
responded to me like we're having a conversation.
Right.
And it's
Oh,
like,
sorry, Dave.
oh, sorry, I'll fix that. Thank you for updating. And I'm like, who is this? Who's
Yeah.
behind my
Yeah.
monitor? Who's talking to me? And I'm like, it's like you talking about the speed. And
Yeah.
I'm cautiously excited to
Mm-hmm.
see how this can help people. Like
Right.
I can just here's my thought. You have a doctor in Japan and a doctor in Canada, both working on the same project, but they're not talking to each other.
Right.
Right. And you're stuck in Japan on this thing. I've already
Mm-hmm.
solved that thing, but I'm
Right.
stuck on something you've solved. So if the two of us could work together
I like that.
in the speed of what's going on, we could have an answer combined.
Right.
So let's get out of our silos, help
Yeah.
each other, and come up with an answer to some of these things. We might solve a lot of problems just by the speed of what's
That is
happening.
true. I love that application for it, and that's true. There are so many. There's so many ways to use something like ChatGPT, and nobody's unlocked all of it. But you're right. There's a lot of hidden uses that are probably much more practical and useful than just, hey, answer this question, or, a lot of people kind of pranking it. I saw some kids in my school a couple of weeks ago. They were like, man, I'm going to ask ChatGPT. Man, I can't remember. It was something funny. I can't remember what it was, but it was something a 15-year-old boy
Yeah,
would
would
ask.
ask. Yeah.
I literally can't remember. I would say it if I could remember, but it was just something like, oh, really? You're using it for that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what a waste.
Like fart jokes or something. Yeah.
Right. Something
Something like that.
silly
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
stupid. Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff that can be done with it, but we haven't even scratched the surface of the uses of it yet. And they're starting to combine it with other AI tools, and people are talking about very quickly that we're going to see a consolidation of a lot of these tools. Like, you're going to see the ChatGPT Mid-Journey combo. That's going to become a thing. You're going to see, and there's already stuff. There's something called Runway.ai. I don't know if it's Runway.ai, but Runway combined, it's like a video suite type of thing. So you can take videos, you can remove backgrounds, you can animate pictures. Yeah, it's called Runway.
Really?
It's fairly new. Yeah. if anybody's interested in this stuff, go to futuretools.io. There's just this guy is curating a bunch of these AI tools, and they're all there. You can search by category if you want image generation, if you want voice modulation, if you want. They're all on there. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but highly recommend futuretools.io. And there's another one called Futurepedia. Very similar.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm writing.
But-
I'm writing. I'm writing. As fast as you're talking, I'm writing. And we're
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
put this,
So
yeah.
Hopefully, you'll put it in the show notes. But
you send me the links for sure, and I'll make sure they're
Sure.
all in there. But
I will send the links. Yeah, if any people are curious with playing with this stuff, because that's the only way right now. And the good thing about it being new right now is a lot of it's free, because people they want to see if it works.
Yeah.
They don't know if it works.
Right.
They're deploying this stuff, and then of course, that's the way large language models work. As people feed it data, it becomes stronger because it has more, and it's it's like a brain. It's a simulated brain that uses words. That can only use words, and that's the limitation of them right now, because it's all words. Humans, we can take in sights, sounds, wavelengths. There's a bunch of stuff going on under the hood. We can take in a lot more than words, and these models aren't there yet, but they're improving very quickly. So if you want to play with them, check them out now.
Yeah, we can read body language. We can do all that stuff at the same time.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly, at the same time. And so that's the limitation of these things. And some people have argued they'll never get there because these models are in a box. They can't experience the world like you and I can. They can't go out, and somebody said simple thing. Yeah, it can tell you like how to solve this quantum mechanics problem, but it can't tell you what would happen if you drop a ball, because it has no spatial awareness. It's
right.
It's a large language model. It's only words. So those simple things that are simple to us, like feeling the wind on your face, feeling the warmth of the sun. I mean, it's hard to reproduce that when you're in a box. I have a feeling somebody's working on this.
Yeah,
there's always somebody working on this. Somebody always. This is the way, and this is the blessing and the curse of human creativity, is that whether it's for ill or good, is in the eye of the beholder. Because somebody's always like, I wonder if, what if?
Yeah.
This.
What if I could have a carriage without a horse?
Right.
What would that be like? What would that be like? And then people would yell and scream at you as you drove by in your Model T.
Exactly.
Cursing at you because you put horses out of business.
I mean, it is the most powerful force. And this is the mentality behind pretty much everything that I do online, is getting people to realize that you have this power. We all have it. You're born with it. What happens is it just gets kind of piled on by school, work, society, your parents, friends, media. All this stuff kind of tells you who you are. But down here, you've been knowing who you are. I'm trying to help people find that again, and then exercise it and grow it, because I know that's what's happened with me. I think sometimes I shouldn't be where I'm at, because when I was a kid, I was so straight and narrow. I was just like, I don't know. I just didn't like taking risks, really. I didn't really like standing out in bad ways. I didn't want to rock the boat too much. I'm the middle of two brothers. I have another brother, too. I have a younger brother. So I have an older brother who I do the podcast with, and I have a younger brother. And growing up kind of in the middle, I just kind of felt that when I was a kid, like that, okay, I don't really want to make waves. I just want to be a good kid, you know? And so, and then going through the military, military reinforces, hey, do it this way, this happens. Do it that way, that happens. It's very direct type of, A to B to C. So doing this type of creative thing where everything's uncertain, and it's like, what am I going to do today? I don't really know. Is it going to matter at the end of the day? Probably not. Not today.
Yeah.
Maybe not even next month or next year. I don't know. Getting to that point was difficult for me. Just kind of to not erase, but to kind of supplant that old mentality of just kind of rigid thinking. And I know what that's like. It was so hard for me in the beginning. And I especially look out for other military members and LE folks and government workers who they're in this. I know how it is. If you're listening to this and you're one of those in that demographic I just talked about, then you know how this is. You have this kind of rigid way of thinking, which is kind of trained into you. And to think outside of what's possible, I want to help people do that.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy.
Nice. And what I love talking to you as well is, Keith, you're so creative and you have that creative heart and mindset. And,
Thank you.
and then like we talked about, having this group that you're pulling together and bringing people in.
Yeah.
And then your writing and your
Yeah.
passion, like there's so many things. And I think the one thing when I hear about all this AI and everything is the one thing that can't be replaced is your
Exactly.
story, your lived experience, who you are.
No.
You
Yeah.
are the only one of you. So have
Never gonna
confidence in that no
Yeah.
one else can tell your story. Even a computer program can't
Right.
tell your story. Right.
Right.
So
Exactly.
and that's where creative people are going to rise up.
Definitely.
Right.
You hit it. That's where people are going to be, like, getting people to own their story, getting people to see the power in it in their own experience. Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, I haven't done anything. I haven't been anywhere. Nothing's really happened in my life. I haven't really done it. That's probably not true. It's easy to say because you live your own life. You can't get out of your own skin, out of your own head.
Yeah.
But to somebody else, your life might be the greatest story ever told.
Mm-hmm.
It might be the underdog story, the David and Goliath. People have done things.
Yeah.
It might be everything to somebody else. And that's one of the things that motivates me doing what I'm doing, because I know there's other people like I've talked to them that have told me, man, I see your stuff. You just don't quit. You just keep putting stuff out.
Yeah.
You don't care how many likes you get, and I don't. That's probably one of my my greatest strengths is, hey, I can take hits. That's one thing the military puts into you. Hey, embrace the suck, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to take time. You can take being ignored or getting the dislikes or whatever. Hey, I know every dislike gets me closer to that like.
Mm-hmm.
Gets me closer to somebody that's going to be like, hey, I really like your stuff. And you just have to do more of it.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten a lot better and my quality's gone up too with everything that I put out. But yeah, I always tell myself, you need to do more. You haven't done enough.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So Keith, I've had you for this long and I know you have more podcasting and stuff to do today. Let's wrap up because I could talk to you all day.
I know.
Quite honest.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. I have notes upon notes upon notes. So this is an episode I'm going to have to go back and listen to several times and go, oh, wait, what did he say? Rewind. So, for people to connect with you, Keith, and again, about the group and about your books and about you, where's the best way to go through the website, I guess would be the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so keithhayden.net is my website. That's kind of the hub for all my stuff. But if you're interested in joining the city and being on office hours and kind of participating firsthand, then the creativefuturist.xyz is where you can find my newsletter, and it'll tell you everything else. I'm writing a lot these days, so you can find that on there. I'm literally like in too many places. The main place you can find me is Twitter. Twitter is my biggest one.
There you go.
KH_author on Twitter. And then I'm on YouTube as well. Hack Studios, HAC Studios. That's Hayden Academy Collective Studios. That's my business. And my YouTube is coming up. So YouTube. Did you know YouTube just added podcasts?
Yeah, they're not in Canada yet. We don't get stuff in Canada until it's done. It's like, oh yeah, that was 10 years ago. Canada, you can now have it. I'm like, come on, I can see the border from where I live. I can see the US. God. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, same over here. I mean, because my VPN and my network is Japanese, they look at me like my Instagram. I started an Instagram last night and it immediately got blocked because I'm over here. And so I had to like send a picture. It was wild. I had to send a picture of myself
yourself with a number.
With the number. Yeah. I've never had to do that before. But I submitted it, and then this morning they were like, "Oh, so sorry, it's unlocked." I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I'm unlocked. I literally had posted nothing. I was like, what is, you block people as soon as they sign up? It's crazy.
Yeah.
So so I feel you on that. But anyway, YouTube has podcasts now, so I'm probably thinking about doing some of the city stuff on there as a podcast because it can go straight to video, and that works well. So yeah, find me on Hack Studios. I've been putting video excerpts from Sirius and Limnic, and then other stuff that I'm doing. So
awesome. Everything you need will be in the show notes, and Keith's going to pass by those links we talked about as well, and we'll have those in there as well. Mm-hmm. And if you need more Keith, because I do, Keith is going to be on in the future. We're going to talk music on the Add to My Playlist podcast. We're going to talk about, or even be on the How to Podcast series, which is another audience that we'd love to talk with you about and have you there. Sure. So open door, Keith. You can just come in anytime you want. We'll just start recording. So for sure. I've learned so much. And again, thank you for your service, and to your wife as well for her service. And it's great to connect with you so far away. And I love this. I love that we can do this. It's great.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, awesome. Dave. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show, and if you're listening this far, thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com, and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow, helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.